Live from VentureX Studios, it's JP, Kathy, and the crew.
Is my microphone? There we go. I was like, I don't hear myself. There you go. All right. Well, hello and welcome to JP, Kathy, and the crew. So happy you could join us today. We wanted to give a shout out to JP and his dad, and we appreciate all the continued prayers for his dad. As a matter of fact, we've got Ask Dr. B. Dr. Good of the Ask Dr. B. Good show in studio with us today is my guest co-host. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. We've got a couple of education topics. One very serious, parental rights and education, which, you know, that's kind of crazy. I never thought there would ever be a time where we would have a conversation about the importance of parental rights in their own child's education. We're living in some very crazy, uncharted times, so we're going to be talking about that. And then wait till you hear the story that Dr. B Good and I were kicking around this morning about Portland. And man, everything's fun and games there. We just might have to move there. It's what their teachers union is wanting to do. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we've got Texas State Senator Angela Paxton coming on, and she will be talking about the possibility of a fourth. Is it a fourth special session, I think? I think it would be a fourth special session. And she specifically has asked the governor for that, along with a number of state reps and state senators, and what that topic would be. And I think it would be kind of a one-topic special session, not that anything ever ends up to be a true one-topic special session. But so we're going to be talking about that. You had a chance to visit Stan the Man, our dear friend. So if you want to give us an update on him.
Yes, I was there last night and had the pleasure of 2 for 1. I saw John and Stan is looking much better, and of course he just had a haircut and a shave and all that. He hasn't shaved his beard. It just
the beard's still long. Yes, yes. Do not get that rumor out there. You will hear from him.
But he has a goal, and his goal is to be home by Christmas.
I love it. I love it.
And John, being John wrote on the whiteboard, here are the steps to get you home by Christmas. It's real cute, you know.
Of course, JP did that. You know, that's very JP. Well, we do, Stan, we're still praying for you, and whatever JP has put on the whiteboard, do that.
Yeah, the first thing is good nutrition.
Yes, yep.
And then walk.
And good physical therapy,
walk.
yeah.
Yes.
And luckily he's gotten, that can make all the difference. I know my mom's a retired physical therapist, and that can make all the difference in the world is if you've got good physical therapy. I'd like to ask for prayers. First of all, thank you. I've got folks already wishing me happy birthday this morning, and thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's just again, very blessed to be a year older and no complaints at all. Do need prayers for my husband. He has got some very serious sleep apnea complications, and we ended up having to take him to the emergency room yesterday. He spent the night in the hospital. We're hoping he's back home today, but just not sure. His oxygen levels when he was sleeping, it was with the wrong mask. We've now, it looks like we're coming to find out, but his oxygen level was getting into the low 70s at best at night, which is not good. He's not expelling, if I'm saying the thing correctly, CO2, so he's got a carbon dioxide buildup in his blood. He's been walking around like a zombie lately, taking a couple of pretty bad falls, took 3 falls the night before we put him into the hospital. That's serious stuff. You don't mess around. If you're like, my spouse they snore, whatever. I'm just going to send them into the other room or whatever. It might be sleep apnea, and sleep apnea can lead to some pretty serious things. And I did want to get one little rant in about this because, of course, as I'm making phone calls, he had been referred to a pulmonologist for a new sleep study. A pulmonologist is almost impossible to get into right now. COVID. The lady said, look, basically I'm watching my husband. He's a walking heart attack. He has a massive heart attack about to happen from this sleep apnea. And she said, ma'am, I am turning down people with lung cancer because the priority is the COVID patients coming in. So then, so there's that. And then now here's my rant. There is we've talked about this on many occasions, and that is the supply chain demand, which, Dr. Good, I'm sure you've gone to some of your regular stomping grounds and seen stuff missing.
Yes, just yesterday I
Yeah.
went to racetrack where
Right.
we get our coffee, special
Right.
hazelnut with almond milk. Blah, blah. There was almost no sugars.
Yeah.
I mean, and half of the place where they have the cream and the different
Right.
empty.
And usually they're
Oh,
fully
brimming.
stocked
Brimming.
and, exactly.
No.
Yeah.
And I said, supply chain? She said, oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one of these other supply chain things, because I started getting desperate and I was like, okay, we'll just pay out of pocket and we'll get insurance to catch up with us later. And I'll skip the middleman and I'll just get him right into a sleep study. And thank goodness one of the sleep study clinics that came very highly recommended that I called, she said, so I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to get him in trouble. She said, I'm not saying this, but I'm saying this. And basically she said that she would probably be able to get him in next week for a sleep study. And even if she could maybe get him in if there was an emergency cancellation or something like that, she said, even if that happens, she said, we're going to be sending him home. And instead of him getting a sleep machine the same day or, within a couple of days, she said the people that we've just seen recently, she said, we're finding that January of 2022 is the absolute earliest. It will be more like February, March, or April that these people will get their sleep machines.
If they're not dead by then?
And I was going to say, again, this is sleep apnea is very serious. You literally, especially if you're overweight, which a lot of times if you're not sleeping and your oxygen's not right, you put on weight just from trying to sleep. You can drop dead of a massive heart attack. You hear about it all the time. Somebody turns over and their spouse is dead in bed. Well, a lot of times it's from a sleep apnea issue. So anyways, somebody get it figured out. Somebody get all these supplies off the boats and get everybody back to the land of the living around here. So, okay, off my soapbox, off my rant. And I do have to say thank you to Dr. Good. She always hooks me up with what we call the Fountain of Youth cream. Of course, since it's Dr. Good, there's anything's no parabens in it, no anything bad is out of it, and it is. I love this face cream. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for my little birthday present today. Let's talk parental rights, Dr. Good. What's going on there, and what is the what can parents do to stand up for themselves at this point in time?
So it's sort of interesting. Parental rights has come to be redefined. Normally, back really before COVID, parents knew that they could go to school and could have lunch with their kid. They could ask for a conference with their teacher, But something has changed. And again, and feel free to debate me on this, but I think that COVID has caused such a shift in our being able to stay in control of ourselves, to stay tolerant of things that go against what we believe, that we are now acting out in such a way that it's causing a divide, a further divide. And I'll use school board meetings. When you have parents at school board meetings threatening, and yelling and really wanting to become physical about what they're passionate, about, then that has led to other people saying, oh, we need to get these school board meetings under control. We need to control these parents, which then makes those parents angry that their parent rights are being, controlled.
Right.
But to the point where the federal government is now saying we're going to train school board members and administrators in how to de-escalate situations during meetings. So,
and that is, if you want to de-escalate parents being upset and emotional, let the parents talk. And I've heard horror stories from around the country where you've got, if parents get up to talk about certain topics, depending on how the school board is controlled, and a lot of these school boards across the country, let's face it, are controlled by more liberal thinking elected officials. I think if you don't feel like you at least get to say your piece, then that's where I think the emotions come in.
I think what the parents have run up against are school board members and superintendents and administrators who have sort of been powerful in the past and used to not being questioned.
Right.
Now we have a lot of questioning going on, CRT, books, all of that.
Yep.
And
parents who have, I think social media has helped educate parents as to, here's the form you fill out, here's where you go. First of all, there's a school board meeting going on. I mean, think about it. I mean, you've been an educator for over 3 decades.
3 people show up.
You're like, please, somebody come to a school board meeting. Well, now you've got social media, so parents know, okay, bingo, 50 parents are going to all of a sudden be at a meeting when they never were before. And then they're told, and this is the same thing, we've talked with Senator Paxton about this in Austin. Here's the form you fill out if you just want to register your issue or your comment. But here's the form you fill out if you want to talk. Here are some talking points. Here's how long you have. I think social media has a lot to do with the fact that you've got more parents who are actually physically going to the meetings than they did before.
And then they bump up against really not very smart practices, like cutting a parent off, not allowing them to speak. Yes. Those things that really do not de-escalate situations.
No, you're right.
So you have well-meaning people on, these school boards who oftentimes have their own agenda.
Right. Wait. Okay, you heard this first on JP, Kathy, and the crew, an elected official who has their own agenda. And what is this you speak of, Dr. Good?
So you actually have now people in Congress who are talking about passing a parent law. And I'll talk more about that on my show.
Oh, yeah.
But why has it evolved to this?
Right.
How did it evolve to this?
Right.
And again, you have the lack of tolerance on really both sides. And again, you've heard me say this, folks, we need to settle down. We need to be more tolerant, calmer, and just learn to accept that not everybody's going to believe the way we believe.
Well, and you and I have talked about this on a couple of your shows, is that before and back when we were doing Drive Time Radio, you would come on and talk with John and I about this, and that was kids online bullying, letting their anger out, some real cruelty. And we were talking about this being a problem with preteens, teenagers, young adults. And now all of a sudden you've got people my age who are literally, stalking and saying horrible things to each other online. So are we so angry from the pandemic that now we've gotten to a point where we're so angry that we're modeling anger and angry behavior to our kids? That's what kind of concerns me, is that if the parents, if we can't get it now, let me tell you, if I go to a school board meeting and I'm talking about something for one of my kids and somebody cuts me off, oh, it is not going to be pretty. It is not going to be pretty. And it shouldn't be. Again, that's where you've got to learn, hey, all of a sudden you do have a full house. You're going to have a 5-hour meeting. As a former elected official, there were times where we had to move our commissioners' court meetings from the commissioners' court room, which, just held a couple hundred people, to the jury selection room, because we knew it was a budget issue or it was some kind of issue that was very emotional. And there were times we were there till 1 o'clock in the morning. It is what it is. It's your job. You're paid by the taxpayers, or you're elected and volunteer to do this, depending on your position. So you've got to know that you may have to hear from a whole bunch of people you don't agree with and handle it as such, like you said, so you don't escalate the problem, you de-escalate, and everybody can have a reasonable conversation.
So I posted something on my page from mombrain.therapist, and it's things we model for our kids whether we realize it or not. The relationship with technology, here parents have the phone there instead of paying attention to their kids. How we deal with frustration. How we solve problems, how we take care of ourselves, how we apologize and repair, how we ask for help, how we handle mistakes, how we navigate conflict, and how we approach people who are different from us. They have somebody in a wheelchair here. How we care for animals, how we care for the environment, and how we listen.
wait, listen, what is this
How
you
we
speak
listen
of?
to each other.
People don't really listen a whole lot anymore. Even if it's, again, listening, now you have to broaden that to mean listening on social media, which is reading, interpreting, and not, take that 10 seconds before you react. Or just like, and this is something when I was a Dale Carnegie instructor, because email was such a big and up and coming thing back then. And we would say, type out an email, sit on it overnight. Now, don't type in who you're going to send it to, because you might accidentally hit send, but sit on it overnight and go back and think, is this really the tone I want to have come across? And that's one of those things. A lot of those things you're talking about, we're losing.
Yeah, I remember it may have been Dale Carnegie, some organization said, don't be thinking about your response while the other person's talking. Listen intently and process it before coming up with your response. And I've had to work on that.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, this parent issue has sort of come up quickly. It's been the last few months where parents suddenly are wanting a different type of control over the school to the point of curriculum and so forth. So now we're having to rethink what parent right looks like at school. Do we have to check every single thing out that we're going to teach to our kids this week with our parents first? That's going to slow down instruction a bit.
Right.
And so, and we've never had to do that to that extent. I mean, we have the Texas State School Board, and they do that. That's their job. And, that's how we sometimes see people's agendas through that particular committee. But that's where the parents have had the choice over curriculum in the past. Now it's getting to the school level, and it's like, oh, what does that look like? Is that a weekly meeting with, a new a curriculum committee?
It may be, and I could think it would probably depend on the school district. And here's what I would suggest to parents. And I was told this. First of all, I was modeled this with my parents. Very involved. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She used to laugh because she was like, oh, you and your brother, we were the first ones to raise our hand and go, oh, my mom will drive. She's got a station wagon. And so every field trip, she was a field trip driving mom, and so I was modeled, my parents being very involved, being on campus, being at events, being at all kinds of things. So I was modeled that. And then I was told that before I had kids, hey, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, get involved, hang out, be with your kids at school, be part of their lives there. And so I was a huge, and I'm still volunteering. I'm on the School-Based Improvement Council, and I do judging where my son's a senior right now. He's like, text me before you get on campus. He liked it when it was Zoom, when there were Zoom meetings. But anyways, so, it's one of those things where you spend that time with your kids, and it's very important because then you get to know the principal, you get to know the assistant principals, the counselors, some of the teachers that maybe your kid's only with for a short amount of time. And so you have more of a feel of what's going on that campus. So I highly recommend, if in any way, even if it's pulling papers, making photocopies, a library mom. I used to do cafeteria duty and clean up tables. Boy, you hear more conversations from kids. You learn more cleaning up cafeteria tables than anything else. Field day mom, dads. Oh gosh, I'm saying mom on all this, but dads as well. It's very important to be involved. And then take it to that next level. And if you can volunteer for a school-based improvement council or some type of committee that they have at the school board level, you can have first of all, and you've got a stronger voice then, because there's so few people who volunteer for these positions. Mm-hmm. You know that you're usually begging parents to volunteer. Sure. So get out there and you know what? And beyond that, run for school board. Run for school board. If you don't like the way things are going, doggone it, get some yard signs, start knocking on doors, and run for school board.
That's right.
Put
your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. So, so I think this is interesting. You're going to be talking more about this on your show on Sunday.
Yes.
Because Parental Rights, and we'd love to hear from the crew, and you can catch Ask Dr. Be Good from 8 to 8:30 on Sundays, and let her know what you think. Send her questions ahead of time. If you want to shoot her questions on our feed today, we'll get those over to you. So that I think the parental rights. What does that look like in the future?
And it's all part of reimagining school due to COVID. Yeah. I mean, it's been a blessing and a curse. People mostly say curse, but it's causing change that will lead to a different school.
Right. Well, and we've even talked about this. There have been some like you call them COVID blessings. Well, okay, let's say your kid has, like my son, until he had his tonsils and adenoids out, it got to the point where he was sick, 1 week a month.
I had that with Nick. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, during
strep throat once a month.
Strep throat, and okay, even while they've got fever, and then you have to wait till 24 hours after fever, and so CJ was always playing catch up with school because of the strep throat. Well, now. You know what? And a lot of times he didn't even feel bad. I was just like, oh, doggone it, this is strep throat again. And I knew I couldn't send him to school because he was in the contagious period, but he felt fine. Well, he could have been online.
Yep.
And still learning from home instead of playing a video game.
I've been disappointed that we haven't gotten better at that. We've sort of defaulted back where some districts don't want to fall back to that. It's too much trouble. And it shouldn't be too much trouble if it means keeping kids learning.
Yeah, and especially, a kid falls and breaks his leg and, hey, can't come to school for 2 weeks. Well, then why do they have to miss out on that experience when you've got the technology? Yeah. So there's lots of different things, but the parental rights, parents, if you don't like what's going on, learn to advocate for yourself and then volunteer and then doggone it, run for school board yourself, run for school board yourself. And before we have Senator Paxton on, we've got to kick this story around. It was so perfect that Dr. Good was going to be in studio with me today. And again, thank you for coming in. So I hear this story out of Portland and I'm like, first of all, Portland, is marijuana legal? I think there's just a whole lot of pot smoking
Washington,
going. That
Oregon,
whole area.
California, yeah.
I think there's just a whole lot of pot smoking going on. I don't know what it is, but Portland always, you're like, of course that's coming out of Portland. There's just so much craziness that comes out of there. But one of the teachers' unions is suggesting this, and I'm going to let Dr. Good read the specifics of it. But when I heard this, I'm like, I mean, how much further away from the real world can we get? So if you'll give the specifics for this story.
So because of the perceived teacher burnout, and I use the perceived not because I don't think it's happening. We know it is. I've been talking about it for weeks. But the teacher unions want to do something about the teacher burnout. So and to help educators and students adjust to the stresses of resuming full-time in-person classes, the union representing the district's teachers is proposing canceling in-person instruction for the high schoolers 1 day every week after winter break. So that tells me they've been off for 2 years, okay? They must have been one of those that didn't come back until this school year. And
right.
So they're seeing that after 2 years of being online, it's been tough adjusting for both kids and teachers. Now, even at the elementary and middle school level, they're proposing that kids would arrive 2 hours late or be sent home 2 hours early one day so that teachers can have more instructional planning time to help plan for the remediation that is due to lost learning. So the high schoolers at least would have what sounds to me like a hybrid, right? They would have their Friday at home doing their 7 classes online. Now, if those of you who understand high school instruction, you can either do regular every day having 45 minutes, or you can do block schedule, which is 90 minutes every other day. And so in this particular case, we have A day, B day, A day, B day, and then Friday, C day. So you have half of your classes on A day, the other half on B day, and then they actually go to 7 classes on Friday for 44 minutes each. So the proposal is to keep the A and B days of 90 minutes in school, but send home the kids to do those 7 classes online. Now, Kathy, you have a high schooler. What's your high schooler going to do that Friday?
So I think this goes a few ways on Fridays. So now my son, he just purchased himself like another $1,000 guitar. Part of it birthday money, most of it money he earned himself. So he likes it. So he would probably say, yeah, I'll figure out a way to get the homework done, and he would probably see if he could pick up an 8-hour shift. I just knowing my son. Or you would have, I think the other two options for kids, you're going to have kids video gaming all day. It is what it is, and that's what they've gotten used to during COVID. Or, boy howdy, I think teenage pregnancy is going to be on the rise, because what do high school kids do? Mom and dad are at work. Somebody's parents, and even if your parents are working from home, which a lot are, at this point still from COVID, somebody's parents somewhere go into the office, and that's going to be the house. Oh, we're all getting together at so-and-so's house because their parents used to be teachers, and we're going to go over here.
For that math test together.
We're studying. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I see that being a lost day of education. I don't know. A lot of back when I was teaching, a lot of my planning was at home outside of school hours, and I didn't think twice about it. I knew that was just kind of part of the gig, just like grading papers. Most of that I did at home sitting on my couch. So basically you're saying you need a 4-day week. And again, having been a teacher, having a longtime educator here with me in studio, being a teacher is not easy. It's physically, intellectually, and emotionally exhausting, because when your kids leave, you love those students with all your heart, and you get worried sick about them. I used to just, like, homecoming weekend, I was always worried about all the kids. Gosh, is anybody going to be driving drunk? I used to say, hey, here's my number, call me, I'll come pick you up. When you're a teacher, it's a hard gig. It is a very hard and exhausting gig. But so are other jobs, and everybody else is working 5 days a week.
So
I don't get it.
Here's what I would put out on the table. Yes, the teacher job is tough. They have, especially secondary, they have up to 125, 150 students every day if they see them every day or every other day. And they do have the instructional planning, they've got the grading and so forth. But they also have other stuff that's always being piled on them. So I would say, hey, teacher union, why don't you advocate for less paperwork? Why don't you advocate for maybe the school board that has the content that they want taught lessen? Because everybody knows that our curriculum is, 7 miles wide and an inch deep.
Oh, yeah.
We teach way too much.
And then you can't do a quality job of teaching. And, and a lot of times you're teaching for tests. And again, let's make the point that you just said. This is the Portland Teachers Union who's proposing this. So consider the source.
So let's propose instead to say, how can we help teachers have to work less and still be able to do what they do best, and that is teach kids. And so,
which is what it's a calling.
It is a calling.
You went to school for journalism, or what did you go to school for?
So when I do college and career talks,
right.
I tell people, don't do what I did. I was a Russian major in college, and then when I figured out that I could graduate in 3 years college if I became a Spanish major instead, because I clept in with 12 hours already in Spanish, right. I graduated with a degree in Spanish. You cannot do that in today's world. That you need a skill to go with that. Now, yes. I was hired, this is 1975, so I was actually hired because I spoke Spanish in an oil and gas leasing company.
That's right, oil and gas world,
But I tell people, you cannot do that today. That's your gravy bonus on your resume. It's not your skill set.
Right.
And so you have to go to vocational school. Oh, look at that. You're a bilingual electrician. You're a bilingual HVAC. You're a bilingual business major, international law.
And you could possibly get, a signing bonus for that. You can possibly get paid more for that, all that kind of stuff. So, but again, becoming a teacher, that was a calling for you. You're passionate about it.
So I was in the classroom 13 years. Yeah. I mean, I was in a fast track for 3 years, and I'm becoming an administrator.
Right.
Matter of fact, people would say, "Do you want to become principal?" Oh no,
You're like, oh no, I love my kids. I love teaching.
That's too much responsibility, right? Until I wanted to affect change, the need to affect change
At a
more
bigger
outside
level.
my classroom. Yeah, that's
exactly.
That's what happens.
But again, I don't know anyone, at least the circle of teachers I ran with and I still run with, and I look at some of my former students who now have become teachers themselves. It is a calling. They absolutely love it. So again, if a teachers union wants to make a difference, okay, well then don't just take a day away. That the paperwork's not going to be changed. That's not, again, we were talking about it, impacting actual change.
Yeah,
A day off, again, you're going to have, I mean,
That's
fentanyl's
hurting
an issue. Drugs are a real issue in our country right now. I mean, we've got an epidemic of fentanyl, and we've got these kids left and right. You're hearing about overdoses and about, things being laced with fentanyl, and kids don't know, and they try it once and they die, and they're a good kid and they've never done drugs before. Well, then let's do things that keep kids busy, that hold them accountable. Again, where are these kids going to graduate from high school and or college or a trade school, or if they go into the military? Who's giving them a 4-day week? You're 20, you poor exhausted kid. You get a 4-day week. That's not the real world.
Yeah, again, the union, I think, is focusing on a Band-Aid and not on a better permanent solution.
Yep, I agree. And then, Brett, if you'll let us know when Senator Paxton's in the waiting room. But it's just, I don't know if it's that the world was headed this way anyways, or if COVID. I mean, do you ever think about
exacerbated, especially the teacher recruitment and retention issue?
Okay.
That was a problem before COVID.
Okay.
We were headed that way.
Okay, so that was something that was a bubble that was going to burst.
Yes. But
anyways,
it's burst faster because of the teacher burnout.
Okay.
So we have teachers leaving mid-year now by the droves. We have many not coming back after winter break.
Wow.
Because they can't do it anymore. What they're being asked to do, as far as the extra instruction, the extra remediation, all of that, it's just taking its toll on them.
Well, a lot of times, and I know we've got. I'm not going to say one of our members of the crew. I won't say the name just in case I don't want to get anybody's kids in trouble. But has an adult kid who basically you're double duty. You were double duty, at least if you're not anymore. You were double duty during COVID, and so many people said, "Well, just turn on the computer," and it's just. I mean, you're teaching the kids that are in your class and out of your class. It's extremely different because there's things online that and through going to some online parent meetings and learning about these things during the height of the pandemic. You've got kids who, and I've learned this through some of JP's truancy stuff, and that is you've got kids who they know how to put a picture of themselves in a loop that looks like they're moving around in their chair, looks like they're stretching and they're there, and they're not. They're not actually on the Zoom meeting. So if you've got kids online, you were having to say, "Hey, Becky, so what do you think about that?" Because Becky might have a little avatar up there that's in a loop, kind of a deal. And then and then you have the kids who, and I didn't realize this until I sat in on one of JP's truancy tribunals. Thank you. I was like, tribulations. That's not it. Tribunals. Thank you. And I remember, there's a child who was mortified. Was fine in a classroom setting, but once it became, I'm online, I'm on video, I'm on the screen, literally had just a horrific panic attack because this young lady didn't want to be seen on screen. She didn't like her image up there on the Zoom screen. So if you're a teacher trying to deal with kids in the classroom and that, you are teaching two separate classrooms, even if it's the same material.
I believe a law was passed in the last legislative session not allowing that.
Okay.
Double. You can only use a teacher for in-house or online.
Good.
So
good. And again, it's two different classrooms. And could anybody get up? Now I'll use math as an example, which is if any of my former students are on, they're like, "Oh, Miss Ward, they never had you teaching math." I think that was like something I agreed to before I got my teaching certificate. I'm like, I promise I will never teach math. So yeah, but okay, if you're teaching, let's say algebra and geometry, two different classes. So anyway, so what are some other things that you have been talking about? What are some hot topics in education, especially since Senator Paxton, who is on the education committee, will be coming on here in a minute?
Well, and I hate to beat the dead horse drum about the teachers leaving, but I can't tell you how much I'm reading on that. This is a real problem.
Is this nationwide?
Nationwide. I was talking, I don't know if you remember, I was talking a lot about support personnel not being there, bus drivers especially.
Oh yeah.
So bus drivers, support personnel. But now it's the teachers. Here we are half a year in. This was supposed to be our comeback year. Yay.
Yeah.
And it's just turned out to be, everybody's so tired. They're March tired by November. Right.
And if you're an educator, have been married to an educator, you know what you're talking about with that. There's a certain part of the year where spring break is desperately needed for teachers to just recharge, and students too, but especially the teachers. And so, yeah, if you're already feeling that in November, you've got a problem.
Some districts were wise in having a week off at Thanksgiving. Some didn't. Some did have to be there Monday and Tuesday, and so that was a lost opportunity in my eyes to let your teachers have the whole week off. Yeah. I'm on teacher threads. I like to see what's going on in the field, and there are a couple things that are very concerning. One is the negativity of the threads, the fueling of the negativity that teachers are bringing there, very concerning. And so I go in there and I try to like or comment positively on positive posts in there to sort of model what we really need in there.
Oh yeah,
because the ranting about what's going on in school is just not healthy. Yeah. And then the second thing is how many are leaving and how many are talking. If they stay the year, they're not coming back next year.
Well, and let me ask you this: so then that's going to be a real problem, and then do you have fewer people educating or graduating from college with education degrees and teacher certification? Hasn't that was already becoming an issue beforehand?
Happening. Yes, and so you have a combination of less kids being encouraged by their parents to go into teaching, number one, and then going into teacher colleges or the alternative certification. So you have all three of that happening, and you have teachers leaving in higher numbers than ever. And so as I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, I think we have districts who are already several hundred positions behind as far as vacancies and so forth. So
that's a jarring number. I remember when, like, on campus there would be like, yeah, we've got a few holes right here, but we've got so-and-so who can fill in for this, and then we can make it the first 6 weeks, but then we'll have to get somebody in.
The bigger the district.
Hundreds? That's jarring.
Hundreds. Houston, Dallas, ISD, hundreds. Ooh. Like 500 or 600 or 700 openings. So what districts are doing around the country is one of two things. One is they have support personnel in there, substitutes. Substitutes have never become so valuable as they are now, and having to pay more to subs, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they're lowering the standard of subs. So it used to be that in most districts you have where we pay the most to subs with a teaching certificate, and then a little less for a college degree, and then a little less for just high school. Right. But they're in some districts across the country, they're allowing 18-year-olds that have graduated high school
to come in and be substitutes. Yeah.
That's the first thing. And the second is that they're hiring companies that have certified teachers in that content area to teach online.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't even realize that was going on.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's going to be a booming
profession.
Oh my gosh, because now what you have a support personnel that goes into a classroom and monitors behavior while they're supposed to be watching the content expert online.
Okay. I didn't even think about that. That is because your people are going to keep having kids, so we're going to keep having the need for school, and as our population grows, which it's continuing to grow, obviously, then where do you, at some point, you do have to think outside of the box, because a teacher shortage that's a frightening thing. I think of a teacher shortage as just a looming disaster, just like a shortage in nurses, which is another field where you've got a shortage right now. You've got fewer people going into nursing school, fewer people being accepted because of COVID, because the campuses don't want, people who are in the hospital doing their, putting their hours in, intern hours in, and then coming into the classroom, and possibly having COVID. So you've got fewer nurses. And I look at something like teachers and nurses. If we've got an extreme shortage in areas like that in society, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and it's going to cost us more too. Here's why. For example, the companies that you go with that have the online content expert,
right,
cost $65,000 a year. Plus, then you have to have the person from the school go into the classroom. So you have a double cost, right? Now, you already have schools who don't have enough money, but all of that.
Oh, yeah.
But the only way to get the content expert is through this company at $65,000.
Interesting. We need to bring you in just to do a show about that, because that's a fascinating way to work around it. Well, speaking of fascinating, that's a good segue. We've got Senator Angela Paxton, who is Texas State Senator for Senatorial District 8. That's both your senatorial district, Dr. Good, and my senatorial district. So good morning to you, Senator Angela Paxton.
Hey, good to see you, Kathy, and Dr. Good. How's everybody?
Good.
We're doing well. We're glad to have you with us. This has been kind of all things education today, so we thought how appropriate that you're on today. But what we want to ask you about first, before you maybe give us some updates on your thoughts on education and where we're headed in Texas, is there going to be, I guess, would this be our fourth special session? Have you recommended that to the governor? And if so, what would this special session be about?
Yeah, so I am part of the group of legislators that have joined together to ask the governor to call us back into a fourth special session. And you're right, that it would be number 4. We did 2 on election integrity that took us a while to get done, and we did a lot of other things, including some things on education. But the third one was devoted to redistricting. So this would be a fourth session. And the topic that we've asked that the governor would call us back to address is the vaccine mandates, to prohibit those, to come up with some legislation that protects individuals' right to make their own healthcare decisions. So I am one of the senators, legislators that has joined that, and I think there are so many people concerned about this. It's interesting. I'll just give you one statistic, and I just want everybody to kind of think about this for a minute. The mortality rate, you would expect that the mortality rate during a pandemic would increase, right?
Right.
I mean, if we're having a pandemic
and things are shutting down, and yeah,
and this virus is killing people, then what the whole idea here is that you would expect then that the mortality rate, that we would have more deaths per capita, right, because of this virus. And it's a very interesting statistic that I don't hear very often, but it's been confirmed over and over. The mortality rate has remained steady.
Okay, so we haven't had this huge spike and you're talking about mortality rate overall, people passing away from cancer, car accident, whatever the case may be, kind of a thing.
Right. Okay, very quickly, also, I have 2 things. I'm sorry to interrupt this program for this special message, but I first want to show everybody I have my special T-shirt on today.
Oh, I love it. I was wondering, I was like, what shirt does she have on there? Texas?
Yeah, I usually have a little bit more professional dress on than today, but I also have a special guest. So this is Baby Pax.
Oh, hey, Baby
Look how happy.
Pax. Look at this cute baby. Oh, your grandma loves you so much. Oh, I love it.
All right.
He just made his debut into the podcast world.
That's right. That's right. Well, and to segue, I guess, I guess that, anyone who has children or grandchildren, they're concerned about what is coming next.
Right.
We know that, and Dr. Good, you, of course, are very dialed into the learning losses that we've experienced with our school-age population.
Yes.
Over these last 2 years as a result of the interruption in their normal school. And it's disturbing because we know that when kids are not on grade level with their reading and with their other subjects, but especially with their reading, by third grade, it is very unlikely that they ever catch up. It's not easy to make sure that kids get caught up under normal circumstances. So when you add on something like this, where we are literally interrupting the learning process for our kids, it has decades of future implications for our economy, for families, for the workforce, etc.
Commissioner Morath was very clear about that. We have lost a decade of growth.
God, the damage from that, that's horrible. Yeah. Mm.
So the thing we don't need is outside influences moving in and creating more interruption to the learning cycle. I will say this, and Dr. Good has been such a pioneer in so many ways, but of course her work with charter schools, I think, you look at the things we dealt with in these special sessions and even in the regular session, but a lot of the topics that we were dealing with are around school-age kids, parents, concerns that parents have about either learning or the culture or the environment that their children are learning in. And vaccines are a medical issue, but it does impact a parent's. There is also a facet of that is really about what parents want for their kids. And there are parents that want their kids to get these vaccines. There are parents that don't. There are parents that want their kids to wear masks and other kids, and there are parents who don't. There are parents that aren't bothered by critical race theory being taught in our schools, and there are parents who do. There are parents who are not bothered by maybe boys playing girls' sports, and there are parents who are. There are parents who disagree with their school boards and want to speak up and are now concerned about being identified and investigated as domestic terrorists. Yeah. There are other ways to deal with these things than passing laws about what we can and can't do in our schools. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but there is another solution, and that is to let parents have choices about where their kids go to school. And I think that we are at a time where parents are more aware and sort of accustomed to having choices with their schools. I think our schools, especially early in the pandemic, our traditional public schools, all of our schools, really stepped into a role of great responsiveness with parents, trying to find a way to keep things going. Mm-hmm. But we're now at a place where there's almost a line in the sand. And I think, we can continue to deal with these things by passing laws about what we can and can't do in our public schools, traditional public schools, et cetera. But I think another thing that needs, the time is right for parents to have choices about where their kids go to school that are not tied to their zip code.
Yep. And so we're hoping to get a little bit more freedom, especially for charter schools, to be able to serve kids in an online way outside of our geographical boundaries, because we do tend to be more successful with kids of color and kids from low economic areas. All the data is there, but
Right.
it's not valued, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Dr. Good, I mean, you've seen this, I've seen this, Kathy, you've seen this as well. You know, we have school choice in Texas, if you can afford it.
Well, that's true.
Yes. Yeah.
We have school. So what I'm saying is, and I think, you know, this is what you're saying as well. I mean, why is it that your zip code and your income level should be the determining factors of the quality of education that your child should get?
And that's such a good point. You know, we chose to have my daughter and my son in private school from pre-K through 8th grade in a church setting. And then we were very fortunate in Plano and both kids ended up through, you know, a lottery system, got accepted into Plano ISD Academy High School, which is a STEAM project-based learning school, very different environment. They've both benefited greatly from that campus and the great job that Lynn Ojeda has done out there. But we lived a different lifestyle. You know, we drove older cars. We didn't go on a fancy cruise. We didn't get to go to Disney every year. It was a family choice and a financial sacrifice. But that's how important that I felt that was. And then not everybody has that option. Even if you do tighten your belt kind of a thing. So again, then the great thing is, and thank goodness in Texas we do still have school choice, and you've got charter schools, and you've got you've got co-op homeschool situations, and there's a lot of different options out there. And we were talking about this a little bit before you came on the show, and if you could maybe wrap us up for the day with this, something that is of great concern, and then how are we going to now? We need to start now. We needed to have started earlier, looking outside of the box. You've got a teacher shortage, a lack of more, folks going into education like the three of us did from the beginning, and you've got a lack. You've got teachers who, are they're done after Christmas break. They're not coming back. A teacher shortage, I said, can be. Dr. Good and I were talking about this. To me, that's going to be as devastating as a nursing shortage. I mean, you're talking about a needed population so desperately in our society, and all of a sudden we barely have anybody who wants to teach anymore.
Well, I think that is a huge issue, and of course, you mentioned a nursing shortage. This is a problem that's not isolated to education or nursing. This is an issue we have across the board in Texas. Is an employee shortage.
Yes.
I have I know some folks that have a staffing company, and one of the things that they said that the demand for them to, help provide qualified workers is at an all-time high, and they are interviewing and processing people, to determine good fits for these companies. But the problem is that these folks get to the end and then they don't take the job. They're apparently interviewing to check a box so that they can continue to get unemployment benefits, and so we've got that piece. That's not necessarily what's happening in education, but it's an across the board issue. I know teachers in private schools as well that are concerned about vaccine mandates, and that kind of ties this all maybe back together. This is one more reason. We don't need more reasons to keep people out of the workplace with vaccine mandates. We need to let people make their own decisions about what they want to do with their health care, and that would be the interest. I will just say this. I think if we don't have the teachers we need, and I was a teacher, you both are educators. Two of my 4 children are educators, and one of them is home with the baby now, right? I mean, she's kind of taking a sabbatical to raise her children while they're young at home. And, but it is a major issue. And if what we don't need to do is create more reasons for people not to want to come back, including vaccine mandates.
Well, will you keep us updated on a potential special fourth session? We'd really appreciate that, Senator. And we thank you so much for coming on today. Great information. And we got to see baby Pax. This is a great day.
That's
I
right.
love it. This was a bonus day. Well, thank you so much, Senator Paxton. We appreciate your hard work. Keep up the great work, and we will see you soon.
All right. Thank
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. All right, some good information, and I think there is a huge push amongst a lot of senators and state representatives to have that fourth session. I think the majority of the folks in this area have requested to the governor of another special session. I've heard through the grapevine, which for what that's worth, that we will
you're
be having
connected
that
more than most.
that that it looks like it is very a high possibility that we'll have another session, because even when the governor came out and did the mandate and said, hey, businesses, slow the roll. You cannot make your employees do something medically that they don't want to do. There are still companies. A family member, even after the governor had that mandate, they came to me and they said, look at this email I just got from my job. And I was like, wait a second, the governor signed an executive order on that. So I think there's a lot of folks who just want to lock it down and make sure. And again, it doesn't mean, and some of the people who are pushing for the special session, them and their entire family are vaccinated and they're getting booster vaccinations. And then there are some who have not been vaccinated and won't be vaccinated. Again, it just goes back to, are you going to force people to get the shingles shot? Which note to self. So when you turn 55 on your birthday, instead of goals like, hey, let's go out and party this weekend, it's, oh, make an appointment for my shingles vaccination and my pneumonia vaccination. Wow, woohoo! What a fun life I'm leading.
Well, you're doing now for health later. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I think one of the things that we didn't really bring up, but is at the root of all this, is the federal government coming in, and so it's the companies are torn, just like the schools are torn.
Yeah.
Between what the feds want, what our
the
state
wants,
what our local local health departments want.
Exactly.
That's led to this very confusing start of the year.
And I think, going back to what we talked about earlier, I think this is part of what's kind of led to this angry mentality that we've got going on, because you don't know, is the federal government going to trump states' rights? Oh, and I didn't use the word Trump as a reference to President Trump, or did I? I'm being silly today. But no, it's one of those things that you don't know. You're very worried. You've got people, I know, again, another family member who has been at the same job, loves the job, works from home. That works for him. And because the job is headquartered out of another country, they're being forced to get vaccines. Again, Governor Abbott's executive order stopped that for now. But he's sitting here thinking, I would have to go back out, and this is a person who's getting closer to 60, thinking I'm in a job that I thought I was going to be in for, another at least 10 years or something, and this is a job I was going to retire from, and now they're saying basically, and again, I was like, please help me with, you work from home. Help me with that, the component, and so do 95% of their employees. They're all contracts, but this is before the pandemic. They worked from home. So I think you're right. You've got the federal government versus the state government versus local entities. Mm-hmm. You really have set up a recipe for people to be angry and upset. Yeah. And so, again, if you're angry and upset, get out there and run for local school board, run for local office, run for state rep, run for Congress. Let your voice be heard. And I think this is a better time to let your voice be heard now more than ever.
But not in anger.
But let it be in a friendly, upbeat way until you're on the debate stage, and then that's okay. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming in today. Really appreciate it. Of course, you can catch the Ask Dr. Be Good show every Sunday from 8 to 8:30. A great show full of lots of information. If you've got a question you want her to answer on her show this upcoming Sunday, let her know, and she can take care of that for you. And then thank you for all of the lovely, I'm just reading all these very kind and gracious birthday messages, and just thank you so much. I love y'all, love the crew. God bless y'all, and we will see you on Friday.